What if a mystery had been buried for over 50 years? What if the only witness was a child, just 3 years old, unable to fully grasp the horror she had survived? What if the secret to unlocking this decades-old crime was hidden inside the DNA of strangers she would never meet? It was the night of July 7, 1972, on a quiet stretch of Interstate 69 in Indiana. Phyllis Bailer, a young mother, was driving with her little daughter asleep in the back seat. The air was heavy with summer stillness, and the road was nearly empty. She was on her way to visit family in Bluffton, a trip she had made many times before. Nothing about this journey hinted at the tragedy to come. But by morning, her car was found abandoned on the roadside. The engine was cold, the hood propped open as if there had been trouble, but no one was around. Nearby, hidden among tall grass, a heartbreaking scene awaited discovery. Phyllis lay dead in a shallow ditch, a victim of violence. Her daughter was there too, alive and unharmed, sitting quietly, too young to speak about what she had seen. The small Indiana community was shaken. How could this happen in their peaceful town? The police began their search for answers, but in 1972, forensic science had its limits. No DNA testing, no advanced technology, just interviews, fingerprint checks, and long, frustrating waits. The case grew cold. Days turned into weeks, months, then years. The family was left with empty questions and a void of silence. Who could have done this? Why was the child spared? Was the killer someone close to them, or a stranger passing through under the cover of darkness? Decades later, the cold case suddenly flared back to life. Thanks to advances in DNA technology and innovative investigative techniques, the man responsible was finally identified. Yet, the justice that came was bittersweet. The suspect had died years before.
On the warm evening of July 7th, 1972, Phyllis Bailer prepared for a routine trip. With calm and care, she helped her 3-year-old daughter into the car. The two set off from Indianapolis, heading east toward Bluffton, where Phyllis planned to visit her parents. This was a journey she had made many times before, one that seemed ordinary and familiar. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the quiet roads. The air was still, carrying the faint sounds of cicadas and summer insects. Phyllis's little girl sat quietly in the back seat, sleepy and unaware of what the night held ahead. The highway, Interstate 69, stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt winding through the Indiana countryside. As they drove, the world around them darkened. Streetlights were few and far between, and only the occasional car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating the road. Several drivers who later remembered that night said there was nothing unusual about the small, dark-colored car with a mother and child inside. It looked like any other late-night drive on a summer road. But then, somewhere along that lonely stretch of highway, the car came to a stop. The hood was opened, as if there was an engine problem. No one around to help or witness the moment, just a quiet roadside scene under the stars. Hours later, at dawn, a passing motorist noticed the abandoned car. It was parked along the shoulder in Grant County, Indiana. The vehicle was locked, but the keys were missing. Inside, no signs of theft or disturbance were found. Yet, something felt wrong. The car's stillness spoke of a mystery just beginning to unfold. Police were called, and officers came to inspect the scene. They looked under the hood and around the vehicle, searching for clues. There was no sign of Phyllis or her daughter. The only sound was the gentle morning breeze rustling through the nearby grass. About an hour after the car's discovery, sparse leads, a search began in a growing sense of urgency. Officers ventured down a rural path, close to a quiet ditch by the roadside. What they found there would shock the community for years to come. Phyllis's daughter was alive, but frightened and confused. Sitting alone, she clutched her small hands tightly, trying to make sense of the world around her. A few feet away lay her mother's body. Phyllis had been shot and attacked in a brutal crime that shattered the peaceful morning. News of the discovery spread quickly through the small towns between Indianapolis and Bluffton. Families grew fearful, locking their doors and keeping children close. The residents struggled to understand how such violence could happen in their quiet communities. Friends and neighbors described Phyllis as a gentle and devoted mother. She was kind-hearted with no known enemies. The idea that a stranger, someone passing through, could commit such a horrific act was difficult to accept. Investigators began piecing together the final moments of Phyllis's journey. They traced her route along the highway, spoke with motorists who might have seen the car or its occupants, and searched the roadside for any physical clues. But witnesses were scarce, and the few who claimed to have seen something could not agree on the details. Tire tracks and other physical evidence led nowhere conclusive. No weapon was recovered. In 1972, forensic science was limited. DNA testing did not yet exist. Investigators relied heavily on interviews, fingerprint analysis, and a painstaking collection of physical evidence. Many promising leads faded into dead ends. Detectives checked rest stops and questioned anyone who had stopped along the highway that night, hoping to find someone who might have seen or heard something important. Despite their efforts, the case quickly began to cool. Each lead seemed to slip away, leaving investigators with few answers and a growing sense of frustration. For Phyllis's family, the pain of uncertainty was crushing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The absence of answers left wounds that would never fully heal. The mystery of that tragic night lingered in the quiet roads and small towns, locked away with the silent memories of a child left behind. In 1972, police investigations relied on the tools and technology available at the time. There was no DNA testing, no digital databases. Detectives depended on fingerprints, photographs, witness interviews, and old-fashioned legwork, walking the streets, knocking on doors, searching for clues. Even the process of matching a fingerprint could take weeks or longer, and only if the suspect's prints were already on file. Many times, leads vanished before they could be fully explored. The crime scene where Phyllis Bailer was found offered little that investigators could use effectively. Blood samples were collected, but in that era, forensic science could only categorize blood types, like a B or O, never link it definitively to a single person. Fibers, hairs, and other trace evidence were gathered carefully, but remained mere fragments of mystery. Without the power of modern DNA analysis, these pieces sat in evidence lockers, waiting for a future technology that could unlock their secrets. Investigators leaned heavily on eyewitness testimonies. Yet memory is fragile and often unreliable. Some witnesses believed they had seen Phyllis's car on the highway that night, but the reported times conflicted. Others spoke of a man seen near the road, but descriptions shifted and changed with each retelling. Under the cover of darkness on a quiet stretch of road, facts blurred with speculation, and certainty was out of reach. Police also tried to connect known criminals to the case. They looked into anyone with a record of violent behavior in the region. But without centralized, computerized databases, this was a slow and complicated process. Detectives had to contact multiple agencies, send letters, and wait for responses that could take weeks or months. Valuable time was lost, and suspects slipped through the cracks simply because information wasn't shared quickly enough. By the end of 1972, the investigation had reached a dead end. Leads dried up, and the case gradually cooled. Physical evidence was boxed and stored, untouched except when a new officer took interest and reviewed the files. The unanswered questions remained. Who had done this? Why was the child left alive? Why had justice eluded the family and community for so long? All of this unfolded in a world without the forensic tools that we now take for granted. The limits of technology in the 1970s made it nearly impossible to crack this cold case. The truth was locked away, waiting patiently for a new era to arrive. By the late 1980s, forensic science experienced a major breakthrough: the introduction of DNA testing. Suddenly, Investigators could link a suspect directly to a crime scene with a degree of certainty never before possible. Across the United States, cold cases were reopened, breathing new life into investigations once thought dead. However, for the case of Phyllis Bailer, hope came with limitations. The biological samples collected in 1972 were small, degraded, and in some instances, poorly preserved. These factors made them unsuitable for early DNA analysis methods. Laboratories simply could not extract a viable profile, and so the case remained frozen in time. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, detectives returned again and again to the cold case files. Each advancement in DNA technology brought a new round of testing. The evidence was painstakingly examined, hoping that progress had finally reached the point where even the faintest trace could be deciphered. Unfortunately, the results remained the same. No usable DNA profile could be produced. The science raced ahead, but the physical evidence stubbornly resisted. Despite these setbacks, the investigation was never abandoned. Retired officers, newly assigned detectives, and forensic experts all showed determination. Boxes of evidence were pulled from storage, photographs were spread on tables, and crime scene details studied over and over. A silent promise was made. Whenever the samples could finally speak, investigators would be ready to listen. By 2024, that moment arrived. DNA technology had undergone a revolution, reaching levels once thought impossible. Advanced sequencing methods allowed scientists to reconstruct genetic information from fragments previously dismissed as too damaged. This wasn't merely better testing, it was a complete rebuilding of genetic code from tiny, broken pieces. The Grant County Sheriff's Office sent the decades-old evidence to a specialized forensic lab equipped with these state-of-the-art techniques. The lab worked meticulously, examining the samples under powerful microscopes, extracting microscopic fragments, and piecing together the genetic puzzle bit by bit. What had been invisible for over 50 years slowly started to reveal itself. The outcome was astonishing. For the first time since 1972, investigators obtained a partial DNA profile. Though incomplete, it was detailed enough to begin a search for the person behind the crime. A whisper of identity emerged from the silence of decades. This partial profile was uploaded into national DNA databases. At first, no direct match appeared, but the profile's genetic markers hinted at ancestry and potential relatives. Instead of a single name, it provided a family tree to explore, narrowing the search from millions of individuals down to a few dozen promising leads. Detectives used forensic genealogy to work backward from distant cousins and shared ancestors. By building and analyzing family trees, they traced genetic connections that slowly converged on a single individual. This process combined cutting-edge science with traditional detective work, phone calls, record searches, interviews, and careful verification. After months of painstaking effort, a name surfaced at the top of the list. The man suspected of committing the crime over half a century ago. Yet, as investigators closed in, they discovered a shocking truth. The suspect had died years before, ending the possibility of living justice, but not the truth finally coming to light. The partial DNA profile marked a critical new beginning, but it was not enough for a direct database match. Investigators turned to forensic genealogy, a powerful technique combining biology, history, and traditional detective work to solve cold cases that seemed impossible before. Forensic genealogy starts by uploading the unknown DNA profile into public genealogy databases. These databases contain millions of genetic records voluntarily shared by people searching for relatives or tracing their family trees. The system doesn't look for the exact suspect, but scans for distant relatives who share segments of DNA with the unknown individual. Matches may include a second cousin in Ohio, a distant uncle in Texas, or a great-niece unaware that her DNA could be part of a murder investigation. These relatives are innocent bystanders, but their shared DNA acts as breadcrumb clues, leading investigators closer to the suspect. For Phyllis Bailer's case, the complex puzzle was handed to Identifinders International, a specialized team skilled in untangling family histories from genetic clues. Using the partial profile, they identified several distant relatives, each sharing small but meaningful segments of DNA with the unknown killer. The genealogists then constructed detailed family trees. They scoured birth certificates, marriage records, obituaries, census data, and other historical documents. Every record was a piece of the puzzle, connecting distant relatives through common ancestors, then tracing forward as branches of the family tree expanded and merged. The pool of suspects narrowed. Investigators applied filters: gender, age, known locations, ruling out anyone too young in 1972 or geographically disconnected from Indiana. Each exclusion refined the search. One name soon emerged as the focal point: Fred Allen Lieneman. Born in Nebraska, Lieneman had lived in several states, including areas of the Midwest. His age placed him in the right range for suspicion in 1972. Investigators researched Lieneman's background, uncovering a troubled history. He had prior brushes with the law, a pattern of unstable employment, and periods where he disappeared from official records for months at a time. His behavior fit profiles detectives had developed over the years. But when authorities sought to locate Lieneman for questioning, they found a dead end, literally. He had been murdered in 1985 in Arizona, shot in an unrelated incident. The man who had evaded capture for the murder of Phyllis Bailer had met his own violent fate decades earlier. The revelation brought mixed emotions. Finally, the name behind the decades-old mystery was uncovered. Yet there would be no trial, no confession, and no justice served in a courtroom. The truth had surfaced, but the story's final chapter was one of closure without confrontation. A faded family photograph appears, showing a happier time filled with smiles and warmth. The discovery of the killer's identity does not bring relief, but instead stirs a storm of emotions within the family. Words fail to express the mix of disbelief, numbness, and the overwhelming struggle to comprehend decades of silence suddenly broken. The stillness feels heavy, like a cold wind blowing through an empty room. The complex emotions ripple deeper. Relief emerges that answers have finally surfaced, but it is shadowed by fresh grief that reopens wounds once thought closed. The family's public faces reveal layers of conflicting feelings: sorrow, anger, confusion. The truth, long awaited, carries a bitter weight, challenging the fragile balance between peace and pain. The nearby town responds quietly but deeply. Flowers, candles, and heartfelt notes gather at a memorial site, creating a small shrine of remembrance. Voices from locals echo sadness. Some whisper of frustration over years lost. Others reflect on how this case became a defining part of their shared identity. The community grapples with healing as old memories resurface alongside new understanding. The world's gaze turns sharp and loud, with satellite trucks and flashing cameras invading the spaces meant for quiet grief. Behind closed doors, family and close friends hold private ceremonies, seeking peace away from the public eye. The tension between public spectacle and private mourning is palpable, underscoring how tragedy unfolds differently in headlines than in hearts. Even as answers arrive, many details remain shadows in the past. Questions about motives, missed chances, and hidden truths linger unanswered. The journey toward closure is uncertain, and the notion of healing feels elusive. Some wounds may never fully close. As the sun sets on the memorial, a quiet hope persists that others will continue seeking the full story yet untold. Rita Curran was a 24-year-old schoolteacher living in Burlington, Vermont. In July 1971, her life was tragically cut short when she was found murdered inside her apartment. For decades, the case remained cold. The police had very few leads, only physical evidence carefully stored away. The identity of the killer remained a mystery that haunted the community for over 50 years. In 2023, a breakthrough came when forensic genealogists analyzed DNA from a cigarette but found at the scene. The DNA matched William DeRoos, a neighbor who had since passed away. This discovery brought long-awaited closure to Rita's family and the town. It showed the power of combining preserved evidence with modern science. Rita Curran's case is a clear example of how major crimes, even in small towns, can remain unsolved for decades. It highlights the importance of preserving every piece of evidence, no matter how small. The breakthrough came not only from advanced DNA technology, but also from the dedication of investigators who kept detailed records over the years. It proved that time is not always the enemy when proper care is taken. In 1982, a woman was found murdered near Lake Tahoe, Nevada, with no identification. She was known only as Sheep's Flat Jane Doe for nearly 40 years. Her identity remained a mystery, and the case went cold. In 2019, forensic genealogy provided answers. Through distant relatives' DNA matches, investigators discovered her name was Mary Silvani. She had grown up in Detroit, far from the place where she was found. The same technology also identified her suspected killer, Clarence Romero, who had died in prison years before. This case demonstrated the reach of genetic genealogy in unveiling long-hidden truths. In March 1964, 9-year-old Maurice Chivarella was abducted and murdered on her way to school in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Investigators collected and preserved evidence at the time, including semen stains on her clothing. The case remained cold for decades, with no suspects brought to justice. In 2022, new DNA analysis combined with forensic genealogy led detectives to James Paul Forte, a man who had died in 1980. This remarkable resolution came 58 years after Marissa's death, making it one of the oldest cold cases solved with modern DNA technology. It underscored how evidence, if preserved, can eventually speak even after many years. These cases collectively demonstrate a powerful truth. Time alone cannot erase the facts if evidence survives. Forensic genealogy has changed how detectives approach cold cases worldwide. This method now rewrites decades-old histories, one DNA match at a time. Every case solved provides closure to grieving families and communities, but also raises important questions about the extent and limits of this technology. How far should society go in using DNA to solve mysteries of the past? Justice did not come swiftly in this case. Decades slipped by as evidence sat quietly in storage, untouched by the technologies of the past. Yet, the passage of time did not erase the truth. 50 years later, new scientific breakthroughs reopened the door to answers long sought. The truth, once hidden, emerged, proving that justice, though delayed, was not denied. This long wait stands as a testament to persistence and unwavering hope, showing that no matter how much time passes, the pursuit of justice can eventually bring closure. Minute 56 to 57, the power of modern science. Modern science has revolutionized cold case investigations. Techniques like DNA analysis and forensic genealogy have turned once useless evidence into the key for unlocking mysteries. What was once invisible to investigators has become crystal clear through these advances. This case highlights the incredible evolution of forensic technology, reminding us that the pursuit of justice is always advancing, adapting, and improving. The tools we have today offer a new chance to right past wrongs and bring peace to families waiting for answers. Viewers play a vital role in this ongoing effort. By subscribing and staying informed, they help keep cold cases alive in public consciousness. Comments and discussions provide fresh perspectives and keep stories from fading away. Sharing these cases broadens awareness, potentially inspiring new leads or witnesses to come forward. Every voice matters, and collective attention can turn cold cases into stories of hope and resolution. Together, communities and viewers can support justice and remembrance. Remembering victims and their stories honors their lives and the pain their families endured. Families and communities affected by crime deserve recognition and respect. Even decades later, these stories carry deep significance and must not be forgotten. Keeping these memories alive preserves the humanity behind each case and strengthens the resolve to seek justice for all. It ensures that victims are more than just names or dates. They remain part of our shared history. Truth always leaves traces, faint, hidden, sometimes forgotten, but never erased. With patience, persistence, and advancing technology, those traces can be uncovered. Justice may sometimes be delayed, but it is never denied. Each cold case solved restores hope that no crime will ever be left unanswered forever. The relentless search for truth continues, proving that justice, no matter the time it takes, is worth every moment.